Hey guys, it's Kevin here from Performance. Today we're working on this 2008 Jeep Patriot with the 2.4 liter engine. We've experienced some check engine lights with the codes P0300 and the P0301. So far we've changed the cam sensor, the crank sensor, the number one coil, and the number one spark plug with no luck. So today we're going to change all the injectors. So guys, we're going to walk you through the process. It's fairly simple. Remove the engine cover and the air filter inlet. Very simple. There's a couple of clips here that you twist. The engine cover itself you just pop off. Now with the fuel rail, this would be number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. This is the number 1 cylinder here. It's also a good idea to remove one of the battery cables when working on any engine components, especially when you're working on electrical components on a vehicle. It's an 11 mil socket. We're going to remove these wiring clips right here to access the 13 millimeter nut that's below it. You just pull it up, it'll come right out. Just move them out of the way a little bit, and you can see that there's a 13 millimeter nut right there. You're going to need a deep socket. You guys also may want to spray down the threads with WD-40 if the car's been sitting for a while or if it has some age, just to make it a little easier to remove the nuts. We lost the audio for this clip, so I'm just going to go over what needs to be done to remove the fuel rail. Place a rag underneath the fuel quick connect, and with your hand just try to force both sides of that green connector together and then force it down. Just be careful, some high pressure fuel may escape when you finally disconnect it. No tools are needed for this, it just takes a second. After you get the fuel rail quick connect to the side, just grab the fuel rail itself and try to pry it from each side and rock it back and forth just to force it free. Be careful not to knock any debris inside the injector holes in the cylinder head. Okay guys, the fuel rail is out and it's flipped over. The next thing you're going to want to do is remove the wiring harness from the fuel injector. What you're going to want to do is take a small flat blade screwdriver and pry between this black housing and this red clip. There's a black clip on the side that you're going to force in with your finger. Push that in as hard as you can and then pop the wiring connector out of the fuel injector. Just force that black clip in and it'll pop right out. Now it's the same for the rest of the injectors. The wiring harness has been disconnected. Now we got the fuel injector clips to remove. You're going to take a small flat blade screwdriver and pry in the small gap between the housing and the clip. Just be careful that this clip may want to spring out of your hands. Okay guys, once the clip's out, you may find it difficult to remove the injector, especially if they're original like these are. We had a little bit of an issue on the first one where the O-ring got stuck in the fuel rail. We're going to try the second one and see what happens. Just twist it and just try to pry it out. We got lucky on this one. The injector came out with the O-ring. In this case, they're blue. You would see them stuck inside the fuel rail. If that's the case, just take a small pick and pry it out. This is a new fuel injector. Suggestion I would have is to put some oil or some lubricant on the O-rings just so you don't rip them when you try to put them in the fuel rail. Spray it down a little bit. In our case, we're just using a little bit of silicone. Just wipe it around it. Careful not to get it dirty. Now this is going to be an extremely tight fit, so you may have to force this. Also, make sure that there's no debris inside the fuel rail. Clean it out with some brake cleaner or carb cleaner just to make sure it's flushed out. Also, may be a good idea to just blow it out with some compressed air. It may help to spin it when you install. Also, you're going to notice it's going to have two relief cuts on the side of the injector that the clip can slide through. It's going to be hard to tell on the camera, but there's a slight relief cut in the injector that the retaining clip slides through. This is the correct orientation of the fuel rail with the fuel injectors facing towards the rear of the vehicle. Now we're going to force this fuel rail into the manifold. Should take a slight push. You just want to seat the O-rings. You'll hear a click when they're finally seated, and also you'll notice that the fuel rail bracket, it'll be basically touching now the manifold. Okay guys, at that point you'll know it's seated, it's secure. We're going to have to reinstall the studs and then reinstall the harness into all the injectors. These are the studs that hold down the fuel rail. Just going to loosely put them in first. There's a brass nutsert that they screw into. 13mm deep socket. Just go back and forth. Just gotta move this. Just go back and forth and seat the fuel rail evenly. Just don't torque down one side at first. You're going to use the German good and tight torque spec. So that's secured. You're going to see these two retainers that snap back into place. You're going to have your 4 fuel injection wiring harness connectors. You're going to slip those back into place. They slip down, and then there's a red locking tab that you force back down. Fairly simple, guys. You'll hear a click. I'm going to go through all 4 of them. Just make sure the tab is pushed all the way down. Fuel rail connection. You have your green disconnect locking tab. Put that over the fuel rail. Force it all the way until you'll see a little ridge in the fuel line. And then push up the green tab and just check. There will be a little bit of movement. Fuel rail is installed. It is crucial that you lubricate the O-rings that go into the fuel rail and into the manifold. Otherwise you may tear the O-rings. Now we're going to try to pressure test the fuel rail by turning the key to run, not starting the car, but checking for fuel leaks. We didn't notice any fuel leaks. It's common to hear a clicking sound and the fuel pump to come on. We've let the Jeep run and get up to operating temperature. This wraps up the install of fuel injectors on this Jeep Patriot. Guys, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, a comment, and subscribe. Thank you.